February 14, 2007. Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. The sun broke over the mountains, casting long shadows across the vast training ranges that stretched toward the horizon. Inside the operations briefing room, pilots from 12 different nations gathered for the opening session of Red Flag, the most demanding aerial combat training exercise in the world. Among them were seasoned aviators flying some of the most capable fighters ever built. F-15 Eagles with decades of air superiority victories, Eurofighter Typhoons representing Europe's finest engineering, and even adversary pilots trained to replicate the tactics of potential enemies. The atmosphere carried a familiar confidence. These were professionals who had spent years mastering their machines, understanding the geometry of combat, the physics of turning, radius, and energy management. They knew that air warfare demanded skill, experience, and split-second decisions. What they did not know was that every assumption they carried into the sky was about to be systematically dismantled by an aircraft most of them would never even see. The briefing officer stood before the assembled group and delivered the rules of engagement. For the next 2 weeks, Blue Force would conduct offensive and defensive missions against a sophisticated Red Force equipped with advanced radar systems, surface-to-air missiles, and multiple fighter aircraft. The scenarios were designed to replicate the most challenging combat environments imaginable, complete with electronic warfare jamming, simulated anti-aircraft artillery, and coordination across multiple domains. Victory would require teamwork, situational awareness, and tactical discipline. As the briefing concluded, several pilots exchanged knowing glances. They had flown in Red Flag before, they understood the challenge. But this time something was different. This time the United States Air Force had deployed a new fighter to the exercise. Its designation was F-22A Raptor, and its reputation, though still largely classified, had begun to circulate through military channels. Some dismissed it as overpriced and unnecessary. Others wondered if the hype could possibly be real. None of them were prepared for what would happen next. Soviet military doctrine had always placed immense value on interceptor aircraft and radar-guided missiles. Throughout the Cold War, the assumption guiding Soviet aerospace design was straightforward. If you could see the enemy, you could kill the enemy. Massive radar arrays were constructed across the Soviet Union and its allied territories, each one designed to detect incoming bombers, fighters, and cruise missiles at ranges exceeding 300 kilometers. Soviet designers believed that superior radar technology, combined with high-speed interceptors like the MiG-25 Foxbat and MiG-31 Foxhound, would provide an impenetrable defensive shield. American fighters, they reasoned, would be visible on radar long before they could pose a threat. Engagement envelopes would overlap, creating interlocking zones of destruction where nothing could survive. This philosophy shaped every aspect of Soviet air defense strategy, from the deployment of S-200 and S-300 missile systems to the training protocols of interceptor pilots. The Soviet Union invested billions of rubles into perfecting this system, confident that visibility equaled vulnerability and that no aircraft could evade detection indefinitely. Then the United States introduced stealth technology. The F-117 Nighthawk, operational since 1983, had already demonstrated the strategic value of low observability during the Gulf War in 1991. Iraqi air defenses, built around Soviet doctrine and equipped with Soviet radar systems, failed to detect the angular black jets as they flew directly over Baghdad and struck high-value targets with impunity. But the F-117 was a limited platform. It was subsonic, carried no air-to-air weapons, and could not defend itself in a dogfight. It was designed for one mission: penetrate enemy airspace, deliver precision munitions, and return home. The lesson was clear but incomplete. Stealth had proven its value, but the question remained: could an aircraft combine stealth with speed, maneuverability, and air superiority capabilities? Could you build a fighter that was not just invisible but also dominant in every aspect of aerial combat? The United States Air Force answered that question with the F-22 Raptor, and the answer was terrifying. The F-22 Raptor emerged from the Advanced Tactical Fighter Program, a joint development effort between Lockheed Martin and Boeing that began in the mid-1980s. The goal was unambiguous: design an air superiority fighter capable of defeating any adversary in any environment for the next 50 years. The result was an aircraft that redefined what a fighter jet could be. Its airframe was shaped using computational fluid dynamics and radar cross-section modeling to scatter incoming radar waves in directions away from the transmitter. Every surface, every edge, every angle was optimized to minimize detection. The radar cross-section of the F-22 is classified, but multiple sources estimate it to be approximately 0.0001 square meters when observed from the frontal aspect. To put that in perspective, a conventional fourth-generation fighter like the F-15 Eagle has a radar cross-section of roughly 25 square meters. The F-16 Fighting Falcon measures around 5 square meters. The F-22, by contrast, reflects radar energy equivalent to a small marble or a bumblebee. On a radar screen, it simply does not exist. But stealth was only the beginning. The F-22 was powered by two Pratt & Whitney F-119 PW100 turbofan engines, each capable of producing 35,000 pounds of thrust. These engines incorporated two-dimensional thrust-vectoring nozzles that could deflect the exhaust up or down by 20 degrees, allowing the aircraft to execute maneuvers that defied conventional aerodynamics. The thrust-to-weight ratio of the F-22 at combat weight exceeded unity, meaning the aircraft could accelerate vertically like a rocket. Maximum speed was estimated to be greater than Mach 2.25 with afterburners engaged, but the true advantage lay elsewhere. The F-22 was capable of supercruise, sustained supersonic flight without the use of afterburners. While most fighters burned vast quantities of fuel to maintain speeds above Mach 1, the Raptor could cruise effortlessly at Mach 1.8, extending its range, reducing its infrared signature, and maintaining energy dominance over any opponent. An enemy pilot attempting to close the distance would find himself perpetually outpaced, unable to achieve a favorable firing position and burning fuel at an unsustainable rate. The avionics suite inside the F-22 represented an even greater leap forward. The AN/APG-77 active electronically scanned array radar could detect, track, and identify multiple targets simultaneously at ranges exceeding 100 miles. Unlike traditional mechanically scanned radars, the APG-77 could change frequency thousands of times per second, making it nearly impossible to jam or detect. It could operate in low probability of intercept mode, transmitting at power levels so low that enemy radar warning receivers would not detect the emission. The pilot could see the battlefield in 3 dimensions, with data from the radar, infrared sensors, and electronic warfare systems fused into a single coherent picture displayed on high-resolution color screens. The F-22 pilot did not merely fly an aircraft. He commanded a moving node in a networked battlespace, capable of sharing targeting data with other platforms, coordinating missile launches, and identifying threats long before they became dangerous. This was not just an aircraft. It was an information weapon. The first operational F-22A Raptors were delivered to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia in December 2005. The 27th Fighter Squadron, nicknamed the Fighting Eagles, became the first unit to achieve initial operating capability. Over the following months, additional squadrons stood up at Langley, Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, and Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pilots selected to fly the Raptor were among the most experienced in the Air Force, many of them former F-15 Eagle drivers with thousands of flight hours and combat experience. They underwent extensive training to master the Raptor's unique capabilities, learning to exploit its stealth, speed, and sensor fusion in ways that had never been possible before. And then they went to Red Flag. Red Flag is not a show, it is a crucible. Every mission is scripted to replicate the chaos and danger of real combat. Surface-to-air missile sites are active. Radar systems search the sky continuously. Opposing fighters employ realistic tactics complete with data link coordination and mutual support. The goal is simple: survive, accomplish the mission, and return to base. Failure means simulated death, and the umpires track every engagement with ruthless precision. When the F-22s entered Red Flag for the first time in 2006, the results were so one-sided that many participants initially questioned whether the exercise had been scored correctly. The Raptors achieved a kill ratio of 241-2. Out of 243 simulated engagements, the F-22 emerged victorious in 241 of them. Only twice did an opposing aircraft manage to register a simulated kill against a Raptor, and both instances occurred under highly specific circumstances that would be nearly impossible to replicate in real combat. Pilots flying against the F-22 described the experience as fundamentally disorienting. They would take off, proceed to the assigned area, and begin searching for targets. Radar contacts would appear on their displays, but the contacts were fleeting, ambiguous, and often disappeared before a lock could be established. Then, without warning, their radar warning receivers would scream, indicating that they had been targeted and a simulated missile had been launched. By the time they realized what was happening, the engagement was over. They had been shot down by an enemy they never saw, from a distance they did not know was possible. Debriefing sessions revealed a consistent pattern. The F-22 pilots had detected their opponents at ranges exceeding 70 miles, identified them as hostile, maneuvered into optimal firing positions, and launched simulated AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles before the opposing aircraft even knew the Raptor was airborne. The beyond visual range capability of the F-22 was so overwhelming that traditional air combat tactics became irrelevant. European pilots flying the Eurofighter Typhoon, one of the most advanced fourth-generation fighters in the world, fared no better. The Typhoon is a highly capable aircraft equipped with modern radar, advanced avionics, and excellent maneuverability. Its pilots are among the best in NATO, but against the F-22, the Typhoon was simply outmatched. During joint exercises, Typhoon pilots attempted to use terrain masking, electronic countermeasures, and coordinated attacks to gain an advantage. Nothing worked. The F-22's sensor fusion allowed it to track multiple Typhoons simultaneously, prioritize threats, and engage them in rapid succession. The Typhoon pilots never achieved a favorable intercept geometry. They were detected first, targeted first, and eliminated first. One Luftwaffe pilot, after a particularly frustrating sortie, remarked that fighting the F-22 was like boxing in the dark against an opponent who can see perfectly. The analogy was apt. The F-22 operated in a different sensory reality, one where information dominance translated directly into lethality. Russian-designed aircraft faced an even grimmer fate. The Sukhoi Su-30, widely regarded as one of the most capable fighters in the Russian arsenal, achieved a kill ratio of 0 against the F-22 during multinational exercises. Pilots flying Su-30s reported that their radar systems could not maintain a lock on the Raptor. They would occasionally receive transient returns, but the contact would vanish before they could launch a missile. The Su-30 infrared search and track system, designed to detect heat signatures at long range, proved equally ineffective. The F-22's engine exhaust was carefully managed to reduce infrared emissions, and the aircraft's supercruise capability meant it spent less time in afterburner, further lowering its thermal signature. Russian pilots attempted to close the distance and force a visual range engagement, where the Su-30 thrust-vectoring engines and high angle of attack performance might provide an advantage, but the F-22 refused to cooperate. It remained at range, launching missiles with impunity, and when it did choose to close, it did so on its own terms, dictating the geometry and timing of the engagement. The Su-30 pilots were not defeated by superior maneuvering. They were defeated by superior information. The psychological impact of fighting an invisible opponent cannot be overstated. Air combat has always been a contest of perception, timing, and decision-making. Pilots train for years to develop the situational awareness necessary to survive in a three-dimensional battle space. They learn to read their instruments, interpret radar contacts, and anticipate enemy movements. But the F-22 shattered those assumptions. Opposing pilots found themselves flying blind, uncertain of where the threat was coming from, unable to trust their sensors, and forced to operate defensively even when they outnumbered the Raptors. The stress of constant uncertainty eroded their effectiveness. They hesitated, they second-guessed, they made mistakes, and in air combat, mistakes are fatal. During one red flag exercise, a group of F-15 Eagles, flown by highly experienced pilots, attempted to ambush a pair of F-22s using a coordinated pincer attack. The plan was sound: approach from multiple directions simultaneously, force the Raptors to commit to one group and allow the other group to achieve a flanking position. The F-15 pilots had used this tactic successfully for years. It should have worked. It did not. The F-22s detected the F-15s long before the Eagles entered their planned engagement range. Using their data link capability, the Raptor pilots coordinated their response without a single radio transmission. One F-22 targeted the northern group of F-15s, launching simulated missiles at maximum range. The other engaged the southern group. Within 90 seconds, all 6 F-15s were declared destroyed by the exercise umpires. The Raptors had not maneuvered aggressively. They had not attempted any daring reversals or high-G turns. They had simply seen first, shot first, and killed first. The F-15 pilots, sitting in cockpits of one of the most successful air superiority fighters in history, could only shake their heads in disbelief. If you appreciate discovering how classified technologies transformed modern warfare, consider subscribing to Classified Warfare for future revelations about the systems that redefined combat. The dominance of the F-22 extended beyond simulated exercises. In 2013, F-22s were deployed to the Middle East as part of Operation Inherent Resolve, the campaign against ISIS. While the Raptor's primary mission was air superiority, it also conducted precision strike missions using GPS-guided bombs. The F-22's stealth allowed it to penetrate contested airspace without alerting enemy air defenses. Syrian air defense systems, equipped with Russian-made radars and missiles, never detected the Raptors. The aircraft flew deep into Syrian territory, struck high-value targets, and returned without incident. Syrian radar operators, staring at their screens, saw nothing. The strikes appeared to come from nowhere, leaving enemy forces confused and demoralized. This was not a failure of Syrian vigilance. It was a failure of their technology to adapt to a threat it was never designed to counter. On September 22, 2014, the F-22 Raptor made its combat debut during the opening strikes of Operation Inherent Resolve. F-22s attacked ISIS training camps, barracks, and command and control centers in northern and eastern Syria. The Syrian government, which was also fighting ISIS at the time, kept its surface-to-air missile batteries passive during the American raids, but the advanced Russian-made S-300 and S-200 systems deployed throughout the region represented a significant threat to conventional aircraft. The F-22s operated with complete impunity. They penetrated Syrian airspace, released their precision-guided munitions, and exited without ever being detected. Air Force Central Command Lieutenant Colonel Tad Scholtes, speaking to ABC News after the operation, confirmed that F-22s had been used to strike an ISIS command and control center. He declined to specify where the Raptors had taken off from, maintaining operational security, but the message was clear. The F-22 could go anywhere, strike anything, and leave no trace. The F-22 also played a critical role in the intercept of a Chinese surveillance balloon over North American airspace in February 2023. The balloon, flying at an altitude of approximately 60,000 feet, had traversed the continental United States before being deemed a security threat. An F-22 from the 1st Fighter Wing at Langley Air Force Base was tasked with the intercept. The Raptor climbed to intercept altitude, closed to within visual range, and fired a single AIM-9X Sidewinder missile. The balloon was destroyed and debris was recovered for analysis. The mission demonstrated the F-22's ability to operate at extreme altitudes, engage unconventional targets, and execute precision strikes with minimal collateral risk. It also marked the first confirmed air-to-air kill credited to the F-22, albeit against a non-traditional target. The technological superiority of the F-22 forced adversaries to reconsider their entire approach to air defense. China and Russia both accelerated their development of fifth-generation fighters in direct response to the Raptor. The Chengdu J-20 and Sukhoi Su-57 were designed explicitly to counter the F-22, incorporating stealth shaping, advanced avionics, and long-range missile capabilities. But neither aircraft has achieved the same level of operational maturity or combat effectiveness. The J-20, while stealthy, relies on engines that lack the thrust and reliability of the F-119. The Su-57 has experienced repeated production delays and technical setbacks, with only a handful of aircraft entering service. More importantly, neither aircraft has demonstrated the same level of sensor fusion and information integration that defines the F-22's combat advantage. Building a stealthy airframe is one thing. Building an aircraft that can see, think, and kill faster than any opponent is something else entirely. Meanwhile, the F-22 has been actively defending American airspace against Russian probing flights. F-22 Raptors based at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska routinely intercept Russian Tu-95 Bear bombers and Su-35 fighter jets as they approach the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone. These intercepts occur with regularity, sometimes multiple times per week during periods of heightened tension. On June 10, 2020, F-22s intercepted two separate Russian bomber formations in a single morning. The first formation consisted of two Tu-95 bombers, two Su-35 fighters, and a Berev A-50 airborne early warning and control aircraft. The second formation included a pair of Tu-95s and another A-50. The Russian aircraft came within 20 nautical miles of Alaskan shores but never entered sovereign American airspace. The F-22s, supported by KC-135 Stratotankers and E-3 airborne warning and control system aircraft, intercepted the Russian formations, visually identified them, and escorted them out of the ADIZ. The Russian Defense Ministry later released video footage purportedly showing the intercept, in which American F-22s can be seen flying in close formation with Russian bombers. The footage was intended to demonstrate Russian military capabilities, but it inadvertently highlighted the constant American surveillance and rapid response that Russian aircraft face whenever they approach North American airspace. These intercepts are not coincidental. They are the product of a sophisticated detection and response system that relies on ground-based radar, satellite surveillance, and continuous airborne patrols. The F-22's speed and range make it the ideal platform for these missions. When a Russian formation is detected entering the ADIZ, F-22s can scramble from Elmendorf and reach the intercept point within minutes. The Russian pilots know they are being monitored. They know that F-22s are en route, but they cannot see the Raptors on radar until the American fighters choose to reveal themselves by closing to visual range. This asymmetry creates a psychological advantage. Russian bomber crews understand that they are being shadowed by an opponent they cannot detect, an opponent capable of shooting them down long before they could react. The intercepts are technically peaceful, conducted in accordance with international law, but the message they convey is unmistakable. American airspace is defended by technology that Russian forces cannot match. The F-22's operational concept fundamentally altered the calculus of air warfare. Prior to the Raptor, achieving air superiority required numerical superiority, advanced tactics, and a willingness to accept losses. Air forces planned for attrition, understanding that even the best fighters would eventually be shot down. The F-22 eliminated that assumption. A single F-22 could engage multiple targets simultaneously, survive in heavily defended airspace, and return home without a scratch. This allowed the United States to project air dominance with fewer aircraft, lower risk, and greater strategic flexibility. Enemies could no longer rely on mass to overwhelm American air power. They could no longer assume that their radar systems would provide adequate warning. They could no longer plan defensive strategies based on the assumption of fair engagement. The F-22 made air combat fundamentally unfair, and that was exactly the point. The question is not whether the F-22 is worth the cost. The question is what the cost of not having the F-22 would have been. If the United States had not developed the Raptor, adversaries would not have been forced to develop their own stealth fighters. They would not have been forced to rethink their air defense strategies. They would not have been forced to accept that American air power could strike anywhere, anytime, without meaningful opposition. The F-22 created a reality in which air superiority is assumed, not contested. That assumption shapes every aspect of modern military planning. Ground forces operate knowing they will not be attacked from the air. Naval vessels maneuver without fear of enemy bombers. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft collect data in contested environments without fighter escorts. All of this is possible because the F-22 exists. The Raptor's thrust vectoring capability deserves particular attention. While many aircraft have experimented with thrust vectoring, few have integrated it as seamlessly as the F-22. The Pratt & Whitney F-119 engines feature nozzles that can deflect the exhaust stream up or down by 20 degrees, providing additional pitch control authority. This allows the F-22 to execute high angle of attack maneuvers that would cause other aircraft to stall. During airshows, F-22 demonstration pilots routinely perform the power loop, a vertical climb followed by a controlled flat spin, demonstrating the aircraft's ability to operate at angles of attack exceeding 60 degrees. But thrust vectoring is not merely a party trick. In combat, it provides a decisive advantage. An F-22 can point its nose at a target without altering its flight path, allowing the pilot to take a missile shot while continuing to maneuver defensively. This decouples nose position from velocity vector, giving the Raptor capabilities that opposing pilots cannot replicate. In a dogfight, if the F-22 pilot chooses to accept the challenge, the aircraft's thrust vectoring allows it to reverse direction faster, point its weapons more quickly, and achieve firing solutions that should be aerodynamically impossible. But the F-22 rarely needs to dogfight. The entire design philosophy of the Raptor is predicated on the idea that the best dogfight is the one that never happens. If the enemy is destroyed at 70 miles, there is no need to close to visual range. If the enemy cannot see you, they cannot maneuver to counter you. If the enemy does not know you are there until after the missile has already been launched, their superior maneuverability is irrelevant. This philosophy represents a profound shift in fighter design. Previous generations of fighters were built around the assumption that air combat would eventually devolve into close-range turning fights. The F-22 was built around the assumption that information dominance makes close combat unnecessary. And the combat record, both in exercises and limited operational deployments, has proven that assumption correct. The radar-absorbent materials used in the F-22's construction are among the most closely guarded secrets in American aerospace engineering. These materials, applied to critical areas of the airframe, absorb incoming radar energy rather than reflecting it. The exact composition remains classified, but they are believed to include carbonaceous compounds, ferrite-based coatings, and frequency-selective surfaces that attenuate specific radar bands. Maintaining these coatings is labor-intensive. After every flight, maintainers inspect the surface for damage and apply touch-up treatments as needed. The F-22 requires more maintenance per flight hour than earlier fighters, but the operational advantage justifies the cost. Stealth is not a binary condition, it is a spectrum. Every decibel of radar return that can be eliminated expands the aircraft's survivability envelope. A fighter with a radar cross-section of 1 square meter might be detected at 80 miles. A fighter with a cross-section of 0.0001 square meters might not be detected until it closes to within 10 miles, if at all. That 70-mile difference represents the gap between life and death. The F-22's internal weapons bays are another critical element of its stealth design. Carrying weapons externally increases radar cross-section dramatically, negating much of the benefit of a stealthy airframe. The Raptor addresses this by housing all of its weapons inside the fuselage. The main weapons bay, located beneath the center fuselage, can carry 6 AIM-120 AMRAAM radar-guided missiles. Two side bays, one on each side of the forward fuselage, carry AIM-9 Sidewinder infrared-guided missiles. When the pilot selects a weapon, the bay doors open, the missile is ejected into the airstream using a pneumatic launcher, and the doors close again, all within a fraction of a second. This minimizes the time the aircraft spends with its internal structure exposed to radar. For air-to-ground missions, the main bay can be reconfigured to carry two 1,000-pound GBU-32 Joint Direct Attack munitions, along with two AIM-120s for self-defense. Future upgrades will allow the F-22 to carry up to 8 small-diameter bombs, further enhancing its strike capability. Adversaries have attempted to develop countermeasures. Russia has invested heavily in low-frequency radar systems, arguing that longer wavelengths can detect stealth aircraft more effectively than the high-frequency X-band radars typically used for fire control. There is some truth to this claim. Low-frequency radars operating in the VHF or UHF bands are less affected by the shaping and coatings that make the F-22 stealthy. However, low-frequency radars have significant limitations. Their resolution is poor, making it difficult to generate a precise targeting solution. They are also large, immobile, and vulnerable to attack. Even if a low-frequency radar detects the presence of a stealth aircraft, it cannot guide a missile to intercept. That requires a high-frequency fire control radar, and those radars remain blind to the F-22. The result is a situation where the enemy knows something is out there but cannot do anything about it. That knowledge, without the ability to act, is strategically useless. China has pursued a different approach, developing very long-range air-to-air missiles designed to target high-value assets like tankers and AWACS aircraft. The PL-15 missile, with an estimated range exceeding 100 miles, is intended to force American support aircraft to operate farther from the front lines, reducing the effectiveness of the overall air campaign. But this strategy assumes that Chinese fighters can survive long enough to launch these missiles. Against the F-22, that assumption is questionable. The Raptor's mission is to clear the skies of enemy fighters, allowing American support assets to operate safely. If Chinese J-20s attempt to close within missile range of an American tanker, they must first penetrate a defensive screen of F-22s. Historical exercise data suggests they will not succeed. The training required to become an F-22 pilot reflects the aircraft's complexity and importance. The entire training program typically lasts 9 months and is divided into 3 main phases. The first phase consists of 3 months of academic instruction at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, where pilots study aircraft systems, tactics, and flight theory. This classroom work builds a solid foundation of knowledge about the F-22's advanced technology and capabilities. Once the academic phase is complete, pilots move on to 6 months of flight instruction at Joint Base Langley Eustis in Virginia. This training is divided into 4 distinct phases: advanced handling characteristics, basic fighter maneuvers, beyond visual range intercepts, and air combat tactics. Each phase builds upon the previous one, gradually introducing pilots to the full spectrum of the Raptor's capabilities. By the time a pilot completes F-22 training, he has logged dozens of hours in the aircraft and hundreds of hours in high-fidelity simulators, mastering every aspect of its operation. The F-22 program has faced criticism over its cost and production numbers. The total program cost exceeded $67 billion, and only 195 aircraft were ultimately built, far fewer than the original requirement of 750. Budget constraints, shifting strategic priorities, and political debates over the necessity of such an advanced platform led to the termination of production in 2011. Critics argue that the F-22 is too expensive, too difficult to maintain, and optimized for a Cold War-style peer conflict that may never materialize. Proponents counter that the Raptor's dominance is precisely what prevents such conflicts from occurring. The existence of the F-22 alters enemy calculations. It forces adversaries to invest billions in countermeasures that may or may not work. It deters aggression by making the cost of failure unacceptably high. And in the few instances where the F-22 has been deployed operationally, it has performed flawlessly. The legacy of the F-22 extends beyond its operational record. It established the technological foundation for subsequent fifth-generation fighters, including the F-35 Lightning II. Many of the stealth shaping principles, sensor fusion concepts, and avionics architectures developed for the Raptor were adapted and refined for the F-35. The lessons learned from F-22 production informed manufacturing processes for later programs. The training methods developed for Raptor pilots influenced how the Air Force approaches fighter pilot education. The F-22 was not just an aircraft. It was a proving ground for an entirely new generation of combat aviation. Enemies who believed they could win air battles through superior numbers, advanced missiles, or better training discovered that none of those factors mattered if they could not see the threat. The F-22 Raptor did not defeat opposing air forces through brute force. It defeated them through information dominance, technological superiority, and a ruthless commitment to achieving first-kill advantage in every engagement. Pilots who trained for decades to master the art of air combat found themselves rendered obsolete by a machine that operated according to rules they did not understand. Their radar systems, designed to detect threats at long range, saw nothing. Their missiles, designed to engage maneuvering targets, had no target to engage. Their tactics, refined through years of experience, were rendered irrelevant by an opponent who refused to fight on their terms. The F-22 Raptor proved that stealth, speed, and information, when combined in a single platform, create an asymmetry so profound that traditional concepts of air combat no longer apply. The aircraft did not merely shift the balance of power. It redefined what air superiority meant. In the skies above Nevada, over the deserts of the Middle East, along the coastline of Alaska, and in the strategic calculations of adversaries around the world, the message was clear. The age of the dogfight was over. The age of the invisible predator had begun. Join us here at Classified Warfare as we uncover the operations and technologies that opponents still fear to this day.